Hello, I'm Brian Froud, and I was a conceptual designer on The Dark Crystal. Wow, it's wonderful to hear this music. It's been years since I've been able to separate the emotions of listening to this music from the events, the hard work and the noise and the dust and the dirt of the set, and place it back into the story. And here is a story that's really, it was a myth. A lot of people didn't quite understand the concept of this film and said, well, we gave the story away. But really, we were telling a myth, and the myth needs to be rather familiar, especially in a very unfamiliar world that I designed. And here's the Skeksis castle. It's rather claw-like, grasping into the very sky, whilst it sucks out of the landscape life. And here, living in the castle, are the Skeksis, the villains of this movie. Jim Henson, when he came to me to ask me to design this film, his inspiration had been crocodiles living in a castle, or a palace. He wanted this juxtaposition of reptiles dressed elaborately and beautifully in a beautiful setting. Of course, when he allowed me to design, I changed a lot of that. If you look at the Skeksis, originally in my designs, they were fish-like, strange, and gradually I changed the designs and they became more like dinosaurs, I suppose, a cross between a bird and a dinosaur. Jim Henson invited me over to New York, where we started the movie with about 9 people, various puppet builders and designers. There's my lettering. Can't believe that they used that, and there it is after all this time, still there. So we, as a small group, started to work on prototypes. And I just doodled and drew whilst Jim and Frank Oz would come in and talk about this world that they wanted to turn into a story. And I just doodled, and Jim liked what I was doing, and I started to make models, little maquettes of shapes and forms. Because Jim didn't know that I could do this. He'd seen my work and thought I would be suitable for this project, but was delighted to discover that I also made things that I could work in 3 dimensions, and that was very useful for this. And I made lots of models to get everybody going. And then we used various sculptors. I met my wife, Wendy, at the beginning of this project. And she was a doll maker, and she was brought in to work on specifically, I guess, the Gelflings, although she did a lot of early prototype work. All through this film, there are lots of symbols. I had to design a whole world, a world that hadn't been quite seen before, and yet seemed to be, that needed to be, I suppose, recognizable. That you felt that it was a real world, that it had, in particular, a history, it had a past. Because we just drop into this place and we have to believe in what we're seeing. So I felt that everything you looked at had some symbols in and shapes that seemed to really specifically relate to this world, you felt that it was an ancient world. And these characters in particular, the mystics, are based on my trolls, which I done many paintings before we started on this film. This is typical Jim of a nude puppet. This is one of the challenges to do puppets is to hide everything, but Jim wanted to show everything in this. And here we are in a lush landscape. You will discover that it's very elemental. Here is, in particular, water. There's also fire and air and earth. There's all the four elements that run through this film as a theme. We used glass paintings, but also liquid skies. We worked on using chemicals and various oils in a tank to create those various sky effects. Now, this was one of the earliest things we shot on the movie, and we spent all day shooting, especially when the mystics walk out of the valley. And this was a huge set. It was enormous, and we had lots and lots of lights. In fact, we used more lights in the movie than any other movie up to that date.
You are in danger.
This, I think, is a very beautiful scene. Our cinematographer was Ozzie Morris, who was an absolute genius. And he'd worked with John Huston. In particular, he did Moulin Rouge and Moby Dick. And I remember him telling me that, especially in Moby Dick, that he had sandwiched in between the film stock a black layer because he wanted to create the sense of scrimshaw. Scrimshaw being what the sailors would create designs on whale tusks, and there'd be that inky line. So Ozzie was really keen on reproducing the feel of my art. And so he used a system called Lightflex. And my pictures are very monochromatic, often very flat. And the early experiments he tried were extraordinarily accurate to my work, but it did look washed out. It looked like there's something, the film had faded. So he really pulled back on that, and so I literally designed everything with the colors in mind. So I made the film have a color range that reflected my work. And here, this looks very much like one of my paintings, not only in color, but in all the designs, the organic feel that's there. There, in particular, you'll spot some symbols in the background, and they relate to the castle and to the Skeksis. Everything interconnects in this film. This was one of the early shots of Jim puppeteering Jen. The Gelflings were a particular problem for us because when everything is sort of wrinkly, it really helps in the movement, and if everything looks strange, you expect the movements to be odd. Jim wanted the Gelflings to be what he called classical. Now, he could never really explain what he meant by that. And I tried, I did various designs, and he could never tell me precisely what he wanted. And Wendy Froud was, in particular, sculpted those and worked closely with Jim as he would come. And between the two of us, Jim and I, moved towards the way the Gelflings looked. And they were hard to do because they were more like humans than anything else. And so we found that they had their own problems. Least of all was getting Jim's hand inside, because Jim had a big hand, and we built everything closely around them. But we'll probably come back to the Gelflings in a little while. These are the Skeksis, our bad guys. And as you can see, quite hideous in aspect. Were a lot of fun to design. I created little maquettes of these things before I let the sculptors work on them. And of course the sculptors had lots of fun when they come to create these, because they're highly textured, as you can see, and horrible. I think they're very funny. There is a lot of inherent humour in this film, apart from its strangeness. This is one of the very few special effects. It's very interesting. It's a film with not that many special effects. It's all real. What you're seeing is what we did. And this gives it an extraordinary quality. A few years ago, I was at a showing of this movie in Albuquerque, where there was an audience of university students. And they couldn't quite grasp what they were seeing. They said, "Well, what is this?" And I said, "But it's puppets." And what was going on is that they were being raised in a digital age, and digital has its own quality, and this has another quality, and it's because it is real. It's physical. Everything you see was made. It has its own, like gravity is part of it. So everything falls and moves in a way we recognize. And so it gives an extraordinary immediacy to it. And I think this is what people really, to this day, keep responding to. We thought we were going to make more of these movies, and we never did. So this sort of stands out on its own as quite a special event. Jim Henson came to visit me originally in England, and I live in a part of the country, Devon and Dartmoor, that has a wonderful landscape of rocks. And he loved the rocks and the moss and the trees and the rivers. And he said, "I want this in my movie." So when I was designing, a lot of England went into it. This is a real part of England, Malham Tarn. I remember going here when I was young on a geography field trip. But as you'll notice, various other scenes which were painted by ILM. A lot of America creeps in here, so there's some Arizona style landscapes as well.
It should be me.
So how we started, and this was from designs, but we did very quickly create prototypes. And I found that the looser I kept my designs, the better things were, as we found out how to technically do these creatures. and we mocked them up. And so a few months into building, which we were still then in New York, we did a test up at Jim's house in upstate New York. And the Skeksis were quite small in those days. And after the test, I said to Jim, you know, these things need to be much bigger. And he disagreed because he was still working, I guess, like with Muppet sizes, although the Muppets did indeed make huge monsters, but most of them were quite small. And he felt that there was a size he was comfortable with. And I said, well, I felt very strongly these things needed to have some presence, that they needed to be big. And also I felt in terms of how they were going to be manipulated, I needed some space in there. I needed some larger robes. So as I said, he disagreed. So he said, well, he being democratic, asked the group that was working on the film. I said, well, what do you think? And they all said that they thought I was right. And Jim, being the generous man that he was, said, okay, go ahead. And I don't think he I don't think he regretted it, because, as you can see, these creatures got quite complex, and I had to have this certain sizes going on here because we needed lots of people underneath, literally underneath these things. So I needed robes that could hide people. We were really pioneering in these early days. Everything is generally based on a hand puppet, but we were putting in more movements than the Muppets had ever done before. And we were using pretty crude stuff, I suppose. I mean, there was like bicycle cables and bits of tape and string, really. We hadn't moved yet into doing the radio controlled. So there are lots of practical reasons for the shapes of these costumes. You know, like robes or things that hide arm wires, all that sort of thing. And of course, one of the major things is these sets are all built off the ground, because sometimes we have to cut holes in the floor to bring people up through it, so we can see the feet of the creatures. I once saw this movie in Italian, and it was hysterical. This scene in particular was very funny, because when you hear it in Italian, it's very much like a demented Vatican. But I guess oddly enough, it sort of reflects some of the ideas of the costumes. I mean, they are based on Elizabethan, Jacobean. They touch on very, very historical aspects, and yet I wanted to look like something you've never quite seen before. And how I got to this was because I started the movie started off in New York, and I'm inspired by nature. And there was there was Central Park, and that was about it. But I thought, well, how do I find nature? And I actually found nature by going out and having lobster dinners. And I would save the shells. And as you can see, there's which will not only for the Skeksis but also for the Gartham, which you can see one in the background there. The lobsters and crustacean have heavily influenced me in the making of this. But part of trying to work out these back pieces, these carapaces that they have behind them, this elaborate thing, I started off by taking plastic toy soldiers and hot gluing them all together and then spraying with paint, gold paint. And this started to give an organic feel that I wanted for the movie. I mean, eventually we started to sculpt them for real, base the forms on bones and claws and everything very organic, and put together in an ornate way. Because it also allowed us to try and define the personality of these things. I mean, this is for me, one of the biggest challenges was to create these creatures that are strange, things you've never seen before, and yet you've got to understand really quite quickly that who they are and what they are, and differentiate between the shapes and forms. So here's my dinner going past, I suppose. The Gartham. They were fun to design and originally had very skinny legs, but of course that's impossible to do the way we wanted to puppeteer them. So I had to redesign them and to hide the performer's legs. So I did it by adding more legs. I mean, I always find that more is better than less in something like this. Here's more, I suppose, the Arizona type landscape. I mean, I suppose under here, these are wonderful. This is one of Jim's ideas. And he said they made things like this a few years back, and we improved upon it. We put them together. They're so simple, but so effective. I love all that stuff.
Her name is Aughra. Follow the greater sun for a day to the home of Aughra.
I was talking to the writer of this movie quite recently, and he said he remembered walking with Jim on Hampstead Heath in England and talking to him about the film they were going to make. And Jim said, we're going to make these puppets that are going to do everything. And there was a pause, and he said, except for running and walking, of course. And so here we have one of the biggest challenges of puppetry is to allow them to walk realistically across the screen. Now here is quite an extraordinary puppet, Aughra. She's quite magnificent, or magnificently beautiful, I suppose, in her ugliness.
My name is Jen.
This was I did the designs, and then I worked with Lyle Conway, sculpted this, and again, as it was Frank Oz's puppet, he was very closely involved, and they had lots of fun making this. She has a beautifully constructed body. There's a lot of fluidity in there, which you'll see later on how well Frank puppeteers that to give her solidity and weight. Because that's one of the biggest problems of puppets, of course, is to create weight. Because normally you're holding this thing above your head, and there's no floor there, so it's all illusionary. You can see with Jen, there are costume pieces there that are not only part of his the way the figure is and about his personality, but there are devices, there are bits that hang off him, and this was to help hide the arm wires.
Aughra!
Now this is a midget in costume. People often say, well, Dark Crystal is wonderful because it's pure puppetry, and I say, the hell it is. That wasn't the point. What we did was use any trick we could use to make people believe in things. This is a wonderful reveal. In New York, I'd been playing around with, they were called Wacky Stacks, which the Muppets made, used for eyes for their puppets, and they had whole boxfuls of this, and I was spray painting them and spraying different colors on, and they started to look like planets to me, and I got some wire and I created an orrery. And Jim sort of remembered this from the early days and said, well, we'll get this into the movie. And we built this for real. And this is quite an extraordinary machine and really dangerous because this is great chunks of metal whizzing through the air. And I think you feel that. You feel its inherent danger, and it's feel. I think if you did this digitally, it wouldn't be the same. Very interesting. Look at these overviews of the sets, because every so often you've got to show the world that they are inhabiting, and this multi-leveled effect. So you can see there's a floor, there's a walkway, there's a sunken bit. A lot of the sets have this. These are not only function as that you can get some of your puppets higher up in the screen, which is a very practical thing. It also is symbolic. It shows us that this world that we created, the world of the Dark Crystal, is a complex and multi-leveled world. I mean, there are things that are hidden. Constantly there are reveals in this movie. And Jim had, and I had, great fun together creating a whole world. There's a lot of this world we invented that we never got around to seeing in it. So there were other creatures that live underground. There are many creatures that we don't get to see. And indeed, this world is multi-leveled.
Listen, Gelfling. There is much to be learned.
Ogra, if you look at her there, which is, talking of symbols, is another symbolic character. I mean, I think to me, she is the Earth Mother. She really is the Earth itself. I mean, she knows a lot about this world. And she doesn't tell you. I mean, and she keeps things secrets. I mean, she's very ambivalent, which is what I like about her. You never know quite which side she's on.
But how do I choose?
And she, in particular, I designed her with one eye. Now, traditionally, having one eye means that you have one eye that looks out into the world, and the other eye, and the eye that she doesn't have, is looking inwards, which is insight. This means that she has wisdom. And she also, if you notice, has in the middle of her forehead this stone, and this is symbolic of the third eye, of psychic intuition. This is, again, I think very Jim, this idea that sound is important. You'll notice in the movie there's song and different ways of communicating. Jim really felt this is important. So here's another danger coming in here, because not only we got metal whizzing around in the orrery, but the edges of these claws were really dangerous, because we had to give them metal edges so they could really destroy things for real. You can't beat a good old bit of fireworks, I think. When in doubt. So here we are. We've had, in terms of elements, we had lots of water and there's wind and there's fire there. I mean, what we found, and here we are, dust, anything like that really helped what we were doing. It added life to it. One of the things that we discovered was that puppets do hardly anything. And one of the tricks, talking of tricks, there goes one there. We went from a puppet to a midget in a costume all in one shot. Like that. As I was saying, there's that puppets hardly do anything at all, and you have to create the illusion that they can do everything. So, sometimes we had mechanics that we swapped over, or it's all about hiding or allowing them. I designed things that they can maybe just do one thing really well, and then as such you implied that they could do everything. So here we are back at the valley, and this was one of the first things we shot, which I mentioned earlier on, and we showed this down in Leicester Square in England with a big cinema, just to have a look at how it looked on the big screen, and it was wonderful. Half an hour I was in trance as I watched the Mystics walk out of the valley. But Gary Kurtz, who was the producer on it, came up to me very worried and said, "Brian, the Mystics seem to be blending into the background." And I said, "Yes, isn't it wonderful?" And it was precisely what I wanted. I wanted the Mystics to be part of the landscape, because everything in this world is alive. And here we have, in particular, we're trying to show that. I had a friend of mine who worked for the Natural History Museum. I invited him to come and help out here and make some of these things. And we had a whole section devoted to creating the creatures for this world. I'd color-coded everything. I created different environments with colors that as we were traveling through the world, maybe the colors changed. I designed lots and lots of creatures and tried to create things again that you've never quite seen before. And there's an interesting feel that developed, is that though, we're in sort of an alien world, I suppose, a lot of this feels like you might be underwater. It could be anywhere. Is it jungle? Is it desert? Is it dry? You never quite know. And are things trees? Is it plant? Or is it animal? But I was always trying to create things that had transition. And we just lots of strings of simple effects in here, just bits of feather, things that we would pull or push, things that would just move slightly. We looked at a lot of natural history films as a group, because we were always looking to see how things moved and how things in their movement would be expressive. And I guess we got some clues, but in the end we just made it up. I think it's fair to say that we had a lot of fun making and designing some of these things. Right, have you recovered now? Let's see, that I was just waiting. That's one of the great shocks. I love it. And Frank Oz, who was going to puppeteer Fitzgig in particular, just had some input into the design of that. He said, "I just want this like a ball of fur and teeth. What I want to see is fur and teeth." So there it is. So he has a tail, and occasionally you see some paws. But I think for just the simplest thing, He has so much personality. Now, my wife, Wendy, sculpted Jen and Kira. I just think she did a beautiful job on these. You see, one of the challenges, of course, is that they have very smooth skins, and most of the creatures are sort of wrinkly, and they really the wrinkles really help in disguising movement, because foam latex will crinkle in the wrong way if you're not careful, and so often sculpted wrinkles quite helpful. But it was a huge challenge for Jen and Kira to get that right and to get the movement. And Kathy Mullen did such a great job in puppeteering Kira. She'd asked for a prototype puppet as early as possible, which we made for her, and she worked hard on it. I mean, everybody else was working on other projects at the time, in particular the Muppet TV program. And so Kathy needed in her spare time to rehearse, because she knew how challenging Jen and Kira were going to be. And Jim was really busy. I mean, he was always off doing other things. And, you know, he was doing, I mean, he was also like pioneering. He would be looking at other technologies. He was a wonderful creative man like that, trying to discover new things that he could put into projects. And so he really, although we built Jen around his hand so it fitted, was really got the puppet quite late, only a few days before filming, and he was he went a bit pale when I remember him standing in his house when he put Jen on the puppet on for the first time and tried to puppeteer, and he had to very quickly move from Kermit the Frog broad moves into the subtlety that he did bring to Jen. Because what we all discovered is that less was more in the puppeteering, especially on a big screen. And Kathy, by rehearsing a long time, understood that very early on and did a really beautiful job. We're about to move into one of Jim and Frank's jokes as we're about to eat one of the creatures. Now, I think this scene is quite extraordinary. It's something out of a Buñuel film. I mean, I think if this is not a classic scene, I don't know what is. I mean, I think it has everything. Working with Jim and Frank was wonderful, and they like their monsters, and so they encouraged me to make things stranger and uglier, and they loved inventing this scene because it's quite disgusting, but very funny. And this is just, I think, perfection in its in the way that the puppeteers created individual characters. I had meetings about 3 weeks every day. I would come in and be working on this table with the special effects people, because Jim said he wanted some food that was still alive to run across the table. So the special effects guys invented this track on which this food was going to run across, and it was elaborate and it took forever, and then it didn't work. So I said to Jim, you know, I remember these little wind-up bugs you can get in toy shops. And so I got one of those, and we just glued some feathers to them. and wound them up and let them go across the table. So from something that could have been, $1 million of special effects turned out to be a $5 special effect. And here they are. I think I'm the most proud of this design. And there's just the guy at the end, wound them up and let them go.
Not bad at all. Look, the Garthen return. That Elfling.
It was challenging to make these Skeksis individual, so we invented various jobs for them that helped us, and then I tried to give silhouettes. Silhouettes were quite important here because I wanted all the detail. I wanted the elaborate detail going into it, so a bold shape was really quite useful. And when we built these things, I mean, there's a lot of very fine fabrics used. A lot of it looks manky and grotty and terrible, but most of it is the finest silks. And the silk is used because it's not only lightweight, but it also drapes well. And you need, a lot of these things are smallish. You need to give it dimension and flow. So we use silks and we put them all together, unaged, and they were quite beautiful. And we were working in Hampstead by now. That's where we made the film. And we took them out the workshop, and we moved down to, there was a disused church, and it was a space where you could rehearse in. And we took them down there and put plastic sheeting on the floor, and I got people down there to distress them. We used cheese graters and paint and bleach and just aged them. I said, these have got to look as if they're thousands of years old. One of the big inspirations for that was that in England, in Canterbury Cathedral, hanging up are these old banners, old flags, that are so old that most of the fabric is gone. It's just fallen away, except for its sort of structure, like netting. It's sort of like a skeleton of a flag, and I wanted that ancient feel in the Skeksis. When we'd finished aging, there were some people who'd worked really hard with the beautiful fabrics, were quite upset, but I think it was worth it because it achieved precisely what I wanted. So there's some feathers just stuck on a stick. See, that's another one of my wonderful designs. Now this was just filmed in a park just north of Elstree. But you'd think you could be anywhere in the world. I mean, it's almost South America or jungle, but we just added a few of our design plants in the background and just created a whole world. Again, this is very typical of some of the creatures I design. They're very organic. You never not quite know what they're made of. Is it made of twig, plant? Is it animal? We worked hard on the movements of everything, and once we decided that these creatures could be bigger, the mystics in particular were quite large, and we had to hide a performer inside. We had to find ways of creating costumes that hid the performer. And I'm about to let you into a little secret here. Jim loved my troll drawings, but there was a copyright problem because if I was designing for this movie, then he owned the copyright. And I said, well, I can't let you do that. So what I did was give the Mystics 4 arms. So my trolls have 2 arms, Jim's trolls have 4 arms. So if that's the secret they have. That's why they have 4 arms. And then if you notice that the Skeksis are also, which you'll see later on, have 4 arms as well. These are the pod people, which I mean, I love Bruegel as a painter, and so they're rather Bruegel-esque. I think there's maybe some Tibetan influence here. Again, all this fabric, a lot of it is silk. I had great fun going out shopping for fabrics. I'm in the back now. There's a huge mistake there. There's a flash of gaffer tape. So that absolutely proves a lot of these things were held together with tape and string. Again, we use lots of techniques here, just typical Muppet techniques, as well as there's some string puppets, various things going on here. I think this beautiful scene, it really looks like one of my paintings in terms of the colour. Now, because these are the pod people, they're very earthy, and I originally designed them as potatoes, like they were tubers, they were out of the earth itself. And like potatoes, I gave them eyes, I mean multi-eyes, like potatoes do. And it just didn't work, because what we discovered, if you got a creature that has like 3 or 5 eyes, there's no focus. You can't see where it's looking, and it lost its personality. So we came down to just 2 eyes. And I was always trying to like move the eyes around a bit, but because of putting in the movements, we had to often even things up. And so I try to put some life back into the game by getting the wrinkles to be different levels. You had to really get out of the way when these things turned up, because they were positively dangerous. We built prototypes of the Gartham, and Jim every so often would see what the progress was, and he would say, "Oh no, make it lighter," because his concern was always for his performers. He cared about them because they were precious. He didn't want to damage them. And we rebuilt the Gartham many times at great expense. And he said, no, lighter, because these guys have got to be in there all day, and they're going to work hard, and I don't want to damage them. And we eventually got them as light as possible. The other thing is, like I say, in the Mystics, is that we, when we built the costumes, we also had ways of quickly getting people out of costumes in case of accident, or ways of taking bits of costume off to get air in. So people, when the shot was finished, we would rip bits of the costume off because it had Velcro on it, and get fans in just to get air in, because it was very hot in there. I mean, these sets, everybody thinks it's very romantic to make a movie. It's not. It's a workplace. It's hot. It's dirty and dusty. Because we say we use lots of lights, and it is hot and sweaty, and often really boring. I mean, because it's like you wait around a long time before they do the shot, and then it's take after take to get it right. Not that I know a lot about that, because I was sort of never there. I was always on the next set, because my job was to get everything ready for the next scene. So I was there checking on the environment to see, that was right. I'd watch it throughout the making, with the plaster work, and then the set dressing, or I was in the workshop working on the next creatures that needed to be in the next shot. So I was always somewhere else. So it was quite rare that I got onto the set to see anything. And then again, I mean, I didn't have time. I was busy. This movie was 5 years of my life. We had Christmas off, but day in and day out, that's what I did. And I think it shows. I think that there is. I realized early on that I just couldn't do a design and just and think that'll get on the screen. I needed to translate it for other people. I designed in a way that I found out what the technology was, that we found out how we thought we were going to make it, and I would redesign around that structure. And so I always felt it was akin to finding what the soul of the creature was. It wasn't just the way it looked, it was like how it felt. Because, as I say, these things don't do very much, and everything that you see has got to give you information. There's things in the costume that are giving you information about the personality, about the world that it lives in, and there is in the very few movements that these things can make, it's got to be expressive. Here we are in a place where we see and learn a little bit more about the world. In the background, we've got a suggestion of an ancient world. We see little clues of what the Gelfling architecture might have been like, of the symbols. See, threes in this movie are very important. There's a little, you notice in the background, and carved in there as a triple symbol, very much based on, for the Gelflings, on seeds and pods. It's about life and nature. Kira she's almost like she's the goddess of spring. She's very connected to nature, and she has this ability, as you see, to talk and communicate with nature, with the animals and everything. Because here we have Jen and Kira, the Gelflings, are the future of this world. They're here to fulfill their destiny.
Single shines the triple sun. What was sundered and undone shall be whole. The two made one.
Jen has see the little remnants of a triangular symbol on his tunic.
Gelfling hand. Do you know what that means, Kira?
Wait. This is a piece of the dark.
There are many shards in the movie. We made lots of them, but they all got broken eventually because they always mainly thrown around or used, and most of them have disappeared. I mean, to find a real shard now is a rare thing.
Stay, friend. Prophecy caused all this trouble.
That prophecy?
This is Frank at his best, I think, puppeteering.
Skeksis is afraid. Fear Gelfling.
But you're scared.
This Skeksis had so much personality. He was so unctuous.
No, please, must listen. I'm outcast. If I make peace...
You can just get a glimpse here on the back of the Skeksis, and you wouldn't know if you didn't know to look for it. The vestigial hands. Saying that the mystics had 4 arms, so do the Skeksis. Because one of the, of course, the secrets that we discovered in this movie is that the Skeksis and the mystics are 2 aspects of the same creature. So I had to design them anatomically in a similar way. Although the Skeksis are very much dinosaur birds with beaks, their skull structure is the same as the mystics. So when they conjoined, you do feel that they were part of the same creature. So the Skeksis have these little arms at the back, and because one of the things they use the hands for is they part in their elaborate costumes. Before they disintegrated quite so much as they did, had flags on it and peacock feathers and were more brightly coloured, and they used these hands to manipulate their back plates in elaborate ways. One of our performers was Robbie Barnett, who was a circus performer, and he told me one day that he stilt walked, and I said, "Could you bring your stilts in and let's have a look?" And he did, and he was wonderful. And I said, can you bend over? And he said, "Well, I can, but it's dangerous." I said, "Well, what if you had supports, so they were like other legs?" And he said, "Oh, I could do that." So that night I got the workshop to make up some forelegs, and then the following day Robbie tried them out, because I was always looking of ways to invent creatures, and I was, as I say, found it was better to design from the inside out. And I found out like Robbie could do, and after a while, he said, "Well, it's a bit dangerous. I need like a harness, a rope." And so we set that up. And after a while, as he developed this, I said, "Jim, come and have a look at this." And because Jim looked at it and loved it, and he said, and the first thing he said, "Well, can you ride like the wind?" And that was what happened there. That was the riding like the wind. And so I then designed a whole structure to go on the outside, and that was how the Landstriders came about.
Silence, animals!
So I was saying before that I felt that there was sort of various influences of the film, like a Buñuel film, but I think this is sort of like Frankenstein movie. It's a lot of fun. We had fun inventing all these machines that, of course, being in the world of Dark Crystal, were part machine and part plant, I suppose. Now for more like, I think, a Stanley Kubrick 2001 moment. Almost feels like space age as this thing opens up.
The reflector will capture the beams of the dark crystal floating high above. Look into the reflector, podling.
There is lots of various energies running through this film. And the dark crystal itself is, of course, the center of this thing. It literally focuses the energy. And it's meant to be used for good. Of course, it's been perverted by the Skeksis, who use it the wrong way. And this is why what we're seeing here just seems so terrible. Indeed, it is horrible. I mean, now we would do that digitally, but of course that was done for real. Special eyes made. In fact, we had special eyes made for everything. There were a lot of various eyes. I mean, I think this has been, maybe eyes were like some of the beginning for Jim as an inspiration for this, because I know that on Saturday Night Live he'd made some creatures that were monster creatures, or sort of ugly, but they had glass eyes. They had taxidermy eyes. This glittering eye was quite magical, and I think that gave Jim a clue where he could go next into puppet making. and these do that. I think the eyes were always very special. I mean, they are there to indicate personality, and also that we spent a long time making them. I mean, we had a whole eye making department. We had various departments making all the artifacts, making all the hard pieces that would go on the backs here. So here they are. I mean, actually, they were on. We had to rig them up on wires because they were very dangerous to run around on.
Look,
The ones who raided your village.
let's go.
I'm not quite sure what those wing things are. I'm always trying to make things like slightly different, but quite what they were meant to be, I don't know. We finally get to see the underside of one of those things, which we cheated, of course, because normally there'd be puppeteers' feet under there, but we try to give a clear view to pretend that they always look like that underneath. It's fun to think there's like a huge bunch of puppeteers trying to hide behind all those rubber puppets. There's something terrible, I mean, awful you feel about these things going over the edge. I love this because it's the sense of scale we get in this. We try to build big creatures so that the small creatures are more vulnerable. That we have a whole world that's populated by different sizes. That got us out of trouble. We knew that they couldn't just fall over the edge, and it wouldn't be neat, as Jim would say, if she had wings. And so, well, why not? But it also has a more serious point, because it actually shows that in this world, the world of the Dark Crystal, everything has hidden aspects. There are things going on underneath things that you don't know about always. And that was like a wonderful reveal, as well as being a funny joke about she being a girl and having wings. And also, I think it refers back to, in a sense, that this is a fairy tale. We made up a story that appealed to us. I mean, we made this movie for ourselves. It was like, you could never do it again. I mean, I think the accountants wouldn't let you do it, or the marketing people say, well, who would have to target your audience. And Jim just wanted to have fun. He wanted to explore ideas. And indeed, I think this has a mystical aspect that's very Jim Henson. He was a deep thinker, and I think this tries to indicates some of his philosophy about everything in it is connected. That's why when I designed it, I'd put all this symbols and geometry in. Everything, including the creatures, have symbolism, and it says that everything in this world is interconnected. That everybody needs to rely on each other, and indeed do. The resolve of the movie is bringing together of creatures. It's affected by Jen and Kira, who have a role to play in this, and every single element of this world is important, and we try to show that in its design and in its story.
Do not be afraid. I am here to help you, yes. Come, show them
moving underground here is interesting that they went in into the sewer, I suppose, which had a big face on it. Like the face is it's like from an Italian garden, really. And elsewhere we've seen water, and water has been used as a positive aspect, as in the Mystic Valley. And here the water is not positive. It's in the sewer, and it's flowing out of the evil center of the Skeksis.
Let go! Let go of me! Jen! Let go!
More dust and dirt. I always remember how hot everything was.
Let go! Let go! Let go of me, Jen! Oh, Jen!
Now, I think these are, again, so funny. You get some indication of their character. I love the horror they have at seeing something beautiful really scares them. You can begin to notice now as we move into the chamber. Because there are the symbols that we've been seeing in the Mystic Valley, also seen in a different form here in the castle. The Chamberlain is holding a scepter, and there's this sort of hooked-like thing. Now, the idea behind this symbolism is that there's this symbol, which is the Ouroboros, which is a serpent that swallows its own tail. And this is a symbol of renewal, and the Skeksis have cut through this now. There is no renewal. They've broken the circle. And you can see this very clearly in this that was a dragon before is now more this like horrible bug thing. Out of its mouth comes this claw, and it's a perversion of something that was once beautiful. And we have a duplicate of this that was in the background of the Mystic when it dies, which was a softer version of it. But it was just another little clue that these creatures are connected to each other. And what needs to happen is that circle needs to be joined up. And that's really Jen and Kira's destiny. That's part of their working out of the story. I always worry about the seam lines on that. And it's, when you're making the film, there's like so much to think of, and developing technology. Of course, when you look at your own movie, I guess you often just see your mistakes. Now, the eye, Ogra's eye, which I've mentioned before, is also symbolic in its own state. Not only is it about insight, but the shape of it is about what's coming up. There are symbols of circles in the movie, and when we come to the Great Conjunction, 3 circles come together and align, and when they do that, they create an eye. And Ogra's eye has been an indication of how important she really is in the working out of this story as well. It's very, maybe not have noticed because of, but we did several costumes for Kira, and she starts off quite green at the beginning of the film, and then gradually, as we were going through the movie, we gave her costume changes. We pulled colour out, and she's now onto a final costume, so it has less colour in it, maybe a few pinks, but it's also distressed. We thought if she's gone through this adventure, things would have happened to it. So it's slightly worn.
Call them to freedom! Now! Kamalia!
So this is what I mentioned before, is that she is connected, very much connected to the animals themselves, and the fact that she now can communicate with them. And often we had to do it really quite quickly, is to create these different creatures. I mean, at the beginning, we had lots of time, but come near the end, we had to suddenly make a lot of things and get them on set. There's a few wind-up flying birds in there as well. Nothing like a nice cheap resolve, I always say. More wind-up bugs. I wasn't here in the corridor scenes. My only, I think, puppeteering in this whole movie was to let go a wind-up bug. I'm very proud of that. One of the very few special effects, again. And here they are. Now we really begin to understand that they are somehow, if not psychically connected, but also physically connected. Sometimes it's very difficult to remember that this was just a series of mechanical effects of mechanics in the hand to make it move. A puppeteer is that we end up being totally entranced by these creatures and believing that they are alive.
Gelfling, I fear to death.
Here's some of our liquid skies and beginning to see that the planets are coming together. The castle itself was just made of plasticine. I always loved the fact that, like, a kid's plaything, plasticine, could be used to make something that's quite astonishing when you see it on the screen.
Oh no.
I like this moment now, out of the darkness.
Oh, where am I? Fizzgig!
Sound was very important, this movie, because again, sound helped to give life to various things. So not only the sort of glowing eyes of Sinister, but the sound as they come clicking in. This was, Jim had to wear a crash helmet for this, with all this metal claws going across his head. It was very dangerous again. So how they're heading towards their destiny now. So this is a great combination of puppeteering in certain shots and as a midget. So I love that. That's Fizzgig as a little ball. That was, Frank said, I just want this little ball of personality. And so we're just like throwing it across the set there. So everything in it is organic. I designed it that way. I wanted so the lights are organic.
No time! No time! When single shines the triple sun.
Where's Kira?
The person that did the voice for this is Billy Whitelaw, who is a classical actress who was Beckett's favourite actress, and she had a great time with Ogra's voice. See the little, again, symbols in the staffs. There are symbols in the costumes of the mystics, and then also in their faces. These creatures are made up of the earth, in a sense, and reflect that. And the patterns and rhythms of nature designed into those costumes. It's like looking at a weather pattern, or it's like looking at DNA, which is all about spirals. Spirals, again, are very important in this movie. And we can see like beginnings of like triangles and shapes in the castle walls. And this was a wonderful set, huge, and you can, again, multi-layered. You see there's depth to it, that there's something going on in the earth itself. And we have layers in the middle layer where creatures show up, and then we have the opening into the sky, and which is a connection to the cosmos. The planets are going to line up, the energy is going to go right through the crystal and and connects. When it connects, should permeate the whole world. It heals the whole world. Kira is looking haggard there. We aged her face down a bit because she's gone through a lot.
This is what I came for. The Dark Crystal.
We've been working on the movie for quite a while, and I've been designing the Dark Crystal, and after a while Jim said, what's this crystal then? I said, well, it's what you've been going on. He said, oh, I thought we meant chrysalis, not crystal. And he felt the movie was about transformation, and a chrysalis was symbolic of that, but I misheard him, and that's how the film ended up as a Dark Crystal, not chrysalis. So for this entrance, we had small people inside the costumes, just so we could see the feet, I guess. And eventually we were cutting holes in to allow the puppeteers through, or framing them off. And this is very much of the Skeksis and their ritual. Their ritual is really for the wrong reasons. It's for themselves. Whereas the rituals of the mystics were always about helping things, being about connection.
Kira.
A great conjunction.
So here it comes. This is for what everything. This is really the focus of the movie, I suppose, is that the Gelflings have to do the right thing at the right time, and this is the right time. And he only gets one chance to do this. So there's again symbols in the staffs there, which is which is about to happen in the sky. The Skeksis, as them, it's about survival. They don't want to die, but for the Gelflings, it's about survival of the planet itself. And I guess that's just sort of some of Jim's philosophy as well. We worked on it together, and Jim wanted something that was about connection. He really believed that we were all connected and needed to help each other. And this is the story we told to try and indicate that. I think there's one crystal left. One shard left. Yeah, they've all gone now. This is a dreadful moment. I feel so sorry when he goes down the pit. Now, I did see the filming of this on the rare occasions, and I know everybody was entranced. Everybody gathered around and watched this. They knew how important a scene this was.
Leave her alone!
Give us the shard and you can go free.
Yes! Just don't harm her!
No, Jen! Heal the crystal.
This is an important theme, which is sacrifice. She sacrificed herself for the good of the world. Now, there were all these men who were, riggers and lighting men and all that, and they know Kathy was puppeteering this. They know this was just a puppet. And I saw them have tears in their eyes when she dies. It's extraordinary. But here he is to do the right thing at the right time. At this moment, I guess, things are put back in place. There is transformation now. And the mystery of the mystics of why they're heading here is now revealed. I like this because it shows that, like all good monsters, that there's nothing inside. They're just shallow creatures, and they're just here, held together by the magic of the Dark Crystal. This is the first time we see the Mystics and the Skeksis together. Everything crumbles away to reveal underneath a crystalline structure. Although everything I designed was very organic, there is a strong geometry that goes through everything. And underneath this castle, which is one of the most organic things, has this crystalline structure underneath. And it has sort of straight lines, where there's hardly any other straight lines in the movie at all. This was a lot of this was a model, which they set off little squids in to break the plaster away. So you know, a little triangle shape there. That's another great shot of the little roly ball pool one, then with a puppet just popping up. This is I guess in a way is very important because the rays of light are about connection. Let's say everything in the world is connected, and the geometry does that. But here you see the geometry. It's geometry of light. Now we finally get to understand my design of why the shapes are the way they are, because they can actually fit together. Now, the Resolve figure, the Erskex, is disappointing to me because it was a special effect. We actually built the puppet, but although the headdress is sort of like glowing twigs, it meant to be just the beginning. My designs had more light in it. There was energy flowing through it. As you see down the center of these figures are spirals, and all those were supposed to move. And I kept saying to Jim, "Well, how's the special effects coming along?" I said, "Well, they're slow, but they're coming along." And when I got to see the film afterwards, I said, "But Jim, where's all the other bits?" They never got put on. So other people like this, but it was meant to be more astonishingly beautiful, because these now are transcending. These are the creatures that are through best wishes of trying to split off the bad side of themselves, the evil side of themselves, have caused havoc in the world. The fact that they couldn't face their shadow side caused problem. And finally now, by the sacrifice and the will of the Gelflings, have effected this transformation for them. And they can transcend, they can move on now into the other place they need to go to continue their work, leaving the Gelflings to be part of this world, to be part of the world of the Dark Crystal, because they are now the rulers. I mean, they now are the king and queen. They are the effectors of harmony in the world.
Leave you the crystal of truth. Make your world in its light.
We couldn't kill her off. We had to have her alive. And here they are, moving on. Leaving, I suppose, a Garden of Eden. It was, I thought everybody did a fantastic job on this. The puppeteers in particular worked so hard. And we started with, say, about 9 people originally in New York, and then we moved to London. And eventually there was about 360 people working on this movie. I think it's fair to say it was a wonderful, joyous thing to do, and it was such a privilege to work with Jim Henson. He was a generous man, especially in his creativity. He enjoyed creative people. He encouraged your creativity, he encouraged your input, and I picked up on that. And so I had, it was my privilege and pleasure to work with all these people who I encouraged to have input. And I just think we all created an astonishing thing.